guys, how's it going? I hope you guys are doing well today. Today, I'm going to talk to you guys a little bit about population genetics, okay? Now, before we talk about population genetics, I just want to give you guys, we're still doing genetics, but we're not doing genetics like you get the trait from your mother, right? And now it's passed on to you, right? We're not dealing with genetics in a family like we did with pedigrees. We're dealing with genetics in a population. And so now let's just remember what a population is. It's a group of the same species that live together in the same area at the same time. Okay, so key here is the same species. Okay, so like for example, we're humans, right? You and I are humans. We can breed with each other. So the definition of a species is you can breed with each other and you can have kids that can also breed with each other. That's what a species is. Like we can breed with each other and we will have kids and our kids can also breed with each other. But if you take like a horse and a donkey and you breed them together, they're going to give you a mule, and that mule is infertile. So therefore, even though the horse and the donkey can breed with each other, right? The horse is a separate species and the donkey is a separate species, okay? And you got to be able to produce kids that can have kids. So that's population genetics. So imagine the entire human population, okay? Now that's a lot, okay? We are around what? Almost 8 billion of us. Oh my gosh, there's too many of us in this planet, right? And there's a lot of variety, right? Within us. There's lots of alleles, right? We have this huge gene pool. A gene pool is all the genes of everybody on this planet that's a human that's pulled together. So we have this huge gene pool. And now we're dealing with, hey, population genetics, right? So we're dealing with the population of humans. And so we're not done with genetics, but it's kind of a different form of genetics. And in order to determine, like say, hey, I want to know what percentage of the population has like, I don't know, brown eyes, right? It's not like, hey, my person have brown eyes. What's the probability I'm going to have brown eyes? It's like the population, right? How many humans on Earth have brown eyes? Okay, well, we can't determine that unless we have an equation, which is going to be this equation. P squared plus 2pq plus q squared is equal to 1. This is called the Hardy Weinberg equation. And this equation, right, allows us to calculate, right, the probability of a population, right? It allows us to calculate, right, what percentage of the population is heterozygous for a trait, or homozygous recessive, or homozygous dominant. So the Hardy-Weinberg principle is right here on that blue sheet that I gave you guys. It's part of that data book that I gave you. And these guys came up with this equation. That's why it's called Hardy-Weinberg, because we got to give credit to the guys who discovered it. And anyways, there's two parts to this equation, right? So just so that you know, there's p squared plus 2pq plus q squared is equal to 1. And I want you guys to realize that p squared is actually a. Okay, so I'm going to say that big A represents, I don't know, brown eyes, right? So actually, we'll use the letter B so that it doesn't matter what letter you use. So, and that little b represents blue eyes, okay? We're going to say that. So p squared is actually, this p squared actually means big B, big B. So it's like what percentage of the population is homozygous dominant for the trait. So this p squared represents homozygous dominant. And then you have this p squared, 2pq, and this 2pq represents heterozygous, okay? Big B, little b. That's what it represents. And then you have this q squared over here, which represents little b, little b. That's what that represents. So 2pq represents the percentage of the population that's heterozygous, right? Q squared represents the percentage of the population that's homozygous recessive, right? So homozygous recessive. And this is heterozygous, okay? And using this equation is actually quite easy, okay? And I'm going to show you an example because you'll see what I mean when I do an example, okay? So let's try this. Okay, so there's actually one other equation that you guys got to know. So it's P plus Q is equal to 1. And then the other one is P squared plus 2PQ plus Q squared is equal to 1. So this one is the Hardy Weinberg, where this represents big B, this represents big B, this represents little b. And P represents just one allele. Q represents just, so like, if you were to like picture this, P squared is actually represented by like a pair of chromosomes. Big B, little b is represented, and it just means like you're heterozygous, and little b represents this. Like, so you guys can see that these represent the pair of chromosomes, but if P is just big B, that just represents the chromosome big B, okay? And Q just represents the chromosome little b, right? So what we're, the gene, like the allele, sorry. So what the P represents is the individual allele, just the one allele on one chromosome. And what does the Q represent? The homozygous, the recessive allele, little b, right? Just one chromosome with this allele on it, right? Whereas big B represents the pair of chromosomes, each with the allele on it, right? So it's really important, right, that you guys understand that P plus Q just represents the one allele, and the P squared and Q squared represents the pairs of alleles, okay? So these are the two equations that we're going to be looking at. P plus Q is equal to 1, and this, Hardy Weinberg. And I'm going to show you how it applies to population genetics, okay? Now, before we do this, and before I show you this, we got to make a few assumptions, okay? The only way you can use these two equations is you are assuming, right, that the population is not evolving. So to use the Hardy Weinberg equation, you're assuming the population is not evolving. Okay, what does that mean? Well, in order to use this, if we have to assume the population is not evolving, then you're going to make some assumptions that, hey, we're assuming that this population, there's no natural selection happening. Okay, that's what you're assuming. You're assuming, hey, there's no mutations happening. Okay, because of course, if you mutate, evolution happens. Sometimes you get a good mutation and natural selection favors that. Okay, you're going to say that you have a large population, okay? You have a large population, right? And you're going to assume that you have what we call random mating. Okay, I'm going to discuss this in a second, why this is important. You guys can actually look at the amoeba sisters. They're very good. Like they have a Hardy Weinberg thing that they do, and it's good. It'll help you with this. But basically, when you're assuming that you are not evolving, you're assuming that what's random mating? You're going to be mating with whomever, whenever, whatever. You don't even care what they look like. Okay? Like right now, you guys choose who you mate with, right? You guys look at somebody and you choose, hey, this person looks so good. I'm going to mate with them. That's what you're doing, right? But when you do that, that's evolution, right? Because you're choosing a trait that you like, and you're going to have children that will have that trait, right? But if you are randomly mating with anybody, it doesn't matter how tall or short or whatever they are, it doesn't matter, you know, what they look like. That means there's no evolution occurring, right? Because you're not selecting a trait that you like. You're just selecting whomever, whenever, whatever, okay? And you need a large population. The thing is if you have a very small population, let's say there was a catastrophe and all humans were extinct and maybe 3 of us survive, well, wouldn't you change the allele frequency a lot, right? Wouldn't you start to see, like, if one of you carry a disease, the disease in everybody, if there's only 3 of you left, all your kids have the disease? So you want a large population. A large population means larger the population, then there's probably no evolution occurring when you have this like large population, right? So the stipulation is you can only use Hardy Weinberg, okay, if you are not evolving. Okay, and how else can you not evolve? Well, no migration is occurring either, okay? So you're gonna have no migration. That means you don't have anybody moving in or moving out. And these are the assumptions that you're making when you use Hardy Weinberg, okay? So you can only use Hardy Weinberg, okay? Which are the two equations, right? Which is actually this equation and this here that I showed you, making these assumptions, okay? That nobody enters or exits the population, right? So you're on a deserted island. There's 20 of you. No one's allowed in or out. Because if somebody comes onto your island, you change the allele frequency, right? You add alleles and then evolution occurs, right? So evolution means that the allele frequency changes, right? That's what evolution is all about. It's the allele frequency changes. So if you have something like you have a good allele, so like, I don't know, you grow a third arm, right? Then nature selects for that, right? And so that's when the allele frequency changes. When you introduce a new allele, and now all of a sudden evolution is occurring because nature selects for that allele, like the third arm, right? So in order for no evolution to occur, right, in order to use this Hardy Weinberg, you're going to assume that you're on an island. Nobody's allowed in or out. If nobody's allowed in or out, that means the allele frequency stays the same. So the alleles in the population, so if there's like 30 of you guys, it can never change. It has to stay the same, whatever. No one's allowed in or out. You need a large population because if there's only 2 of you on the island, one of you carries a disease, then you're going to start to see the allele frequency change a lot, right? But if there's more of you, then you're not going to see those changes as much. You need random mating. You're going to mate, if there's 30 of you on an island, you're going to mate with whomever, whatever. You don't care what they look like, okay? Because if you start selecting, hey, I'm only going to mate with you, right? Well, you're going to change the allele frequency in that island, so you can't. And there's going to be no natural selection, right? So nature's not going to select, like, who's the strongest, who's going to survive. That's not going to happen. And you're assuming on your island there's no mutations are happening, and those are the assumptions that you use when you do Hardy Weinberg. Okay, anyways, I got to end this lesson, but I'm going to do the actual equation in my next lesson. I don't know why YouTube's only allowing me to upload, like, videos that are 15 minutes or less. So I'm just going to put this on hold, and then I'm going to make another video. Okay, bye.